The trailer door creaked open, and the horse hesitated. Dust hung thick in the air, nothing like the polished floors and bright lights he once knew. This was not a showground. There were no banners, no judges, no applause waiting beyond the ramp. Only endless fields, barbed wire fences, and the distant sound of cattle moving under the open sky. Not long ago, this horse had been a champion. He had stepped into grand arenas with his head held high, his coat gleaming under spotlights. Crowds had fallen silent when he moved, every stride precise, every turn flawless. He was trained for perfection, admired for his elegance, and celebrated for his victories. His name had been announced with pride, spoken in hushed tones among professionals who knew greatness when they saw it. Now, those days felt impossibly far away. As his hooves touched the hard ground of the cattle ranch, he sensed the shift. The air was rougher here. The people watching were not impressed, they were doubtful. Some shook their heads. Others laughed quietly. To them, he was just another horse too refined, too delicate for the unforgiving work ahead. No one expected him to last. Whispers followed him as he was led away. A show horse, dumped on a ranch. A fallen star with no place left to shine. Many believed this was the end of his story, a slow fading into obscurity, forgotten and wasted. But what no one understood, not yet, was this. This was not the end. It was only the beginning of something no one saw coming. Before the dust and silence of the ranch, there was light. The show ring was where he belonged. From the moment his hooves touched the polished ground, something in him came alive. The air buzzed with energy, music playing softly in the background, announcers calling out names, spectators leaning forward in their seats. This was his world, and he ruled it with quiet confidence. Every detail of his life was carefully managed. His coat was brushed until it shone like bronze under the arena lights. His mane was braided with precision, every strand placed perfectly. Trainers spent hours refining each movement, correcting the smallest flaw. He learned to respond to the lightest touch of the reins, the softest shift in weight. To watch him perform was to witness discipline turned into art. When he entered the ring, the noise faded. Judges watched closely as he moved, smooth, balanced, powerful yet graceful. His steps were not rushed. He carried himself with pride, as if he understood the importance of every moment. Applause followed him wherever he went, rising louder with each flawless performance. Trophies came quickly after that. Ribbons lined the stable walls. Photographs captured him mid-stride, frozen in moments of perfection. His name appeared in programs and announcements, spoken with admiration by trainers and competitors alike. He was not just another participant. He was the standard others tried to reach. Yet success came with expectations. The schedules were demanding. Travel was constant. Each competition had to be better than the last. There was little room for mistakes, no patience for weakness. Though he performed beautifully, the pressure never truly eased. Everyone expected him to win always. Still, in those days, he thrived. He fed off the energy of the crowd, the familiar rhythm of training, the praise that followed every victory. The show ring was not just where he competed, it was where his identity was forged. And no one imagined how quickly all of it could disappear. Then, almost without warning, everything changed. A small misstep in training, an injury no one thought serious at first, and the world that had once celebrated him began to slip away. The careful rhythm of the show ring, the polished floors, the cheering crowds, the constant praise, was replaced by uncertainty. His trainers grew cautious, whispering to one another about limits and risks. Even the owners, once proud and confident, began to question whether he could continue to compete at the level he had once dominated. Competitions were cancelled. Invitations dried up. He spent long hours standing in empty stables, staring at walls that had never seemed so plain. The routines he had thrived on for years, the early morning grooming, the rhythmic trot around the arena, the applause that followed every perfect stride, were suddenly gone. In their place came silence, doubt, and the sense of being unwanted. And then came the decision. For those who had once adored him, practicality had overtaken sentiment. He was no longer profitable in a world obsessed with perfection and constant victory. Trainers spoke in hushed tones about selling him, moving him to somewhere that could put him to use. The word ranch was mentioned, a place far from lights and banners, where elegance was irrelevant, and strength mattered more than style. No one wanted to say it aloud, but the implication was clear. This was the end of his life as a champion. The day he was loaded onto the trailer, there was a tension in the air that no one could ignore. Even the horse seemed to sense it, stamping nervously, nostrils flaring, muscles taut. The arena that had once celebrated him felt like a memory slipping away. As the trailer pulled out of the stable, carrying him toward a fate no one expected, there was a quiet despair in the hearts of those who had loved him most. They assumed this was the final chapter. The glory days were over. The champion was finished. But what they did not realize, what no one yet understood, was that the true test was just beginning. The trailer rumbled down a dusty road, carrying the fallen champion into a world he had never imagined. When the doors finally swung open, a blast of hot, dry air hit him, carrying the sharp scent of hay, manure, and cattle. The smooth arenas and polished stables of his past were gone, replaced by endless fields, rough fences, and the low murmur of restless animals. He stepped down hesitantly, hooves crunching on hard-packed dirt. Around him, ranch hands paused to watch the elegant horse with quiet skepticism. Their eyes lingered on his braided mane and gleaming coat, and they exchanged doubtful glances. "That one won't last a week," muttered a man with a wide-brimmed hat. Another chuckled softly. "Too fancy for this kind of work." The horse froze, nostrils flaring, muscles coiled. The cattle nearby eyed him warily, unaccustomed to such a creature. The air felt heavy and unfamiliar, every sound amplified: the lowing of cows, the clatter of metal gates, the wind through dry grass. He had never known a world without applause, without carefully structured routines, without the safety of soft, polished floors beneath his hooves. For the first time, he felt lost. Yet the ranchers saw something in him, too. A flash of intelligence in his eyes, a strength beneath the refinement. They didn't yet know how it would manifest, but instinct told them he was no ordinary horse. As the sun sank low over the horizon, casting long shadows across the fields, he stood alone at the edge of the pasture. The show rings, the trophies, the cheering crowds, everything that had defined him were behind him. Ahead lay hard work, uncertainty, and a new world that would test him in ways no one could predict. No one expected him to survive. But as the first stars appeared in the evening sky, something inside him stirred. This was only the beginning. The first days on the ranch were harder than anyone could have imagined. The routines he had once thrived on, the precise steps, the measured pacing, the constant attention were gone. In their place were chores he had never been trained for: herding cattle across uneven terrain, standing for hours under the blazing sun, and responding to commands that were rougher, sharper, unfamiliar. Every morning brought new challenges. He stumbled over loose rocks, misjudged jumps, and startled at the sudden movement of the herd. The ranch hands watched, arms crossed, their expressions skeptical. "Come on, boy, you've got to keep up," one grunted. Another shook his head. "He's all show, no substance." The horse tried to obey, but his instincts from the show ring, so precise, so refined, often worked against him in the rough world of the ranch. He hesitated when cattle stampeded, refusing to push forward as the ranchers commanded. His elegant movements, once celebrated, became awkward, even dangerous. Bruised hooves and scraped legs became a daily reminder that this world demanded something different, something he didn't yet understand. At night, he stood alone in the paddock, ears twitching, muscles tense, watching the sun disappear behind distant hills. Memories of the show ring haunted him: the roar of the crowd, the spotlights, the applause that had once made him feel invincible. Now, silence pressed down like a weight. Even the humans he had once trusted seemed distant, impatient, unsure if he would ever learn. Yet, beneath the fear and frustration, a spark remained. He had faced challenges before, though never like this. His mind, sharp and quick, began to notice patterns: the rhythm of the cattle, the timing of the rancher's commands, the way the ground shifted under his hooves. Slowly, he began to adapt. But progress was slow, and mistakes were costly. Each misstep brought criticism, each hesitation drew doubt. He was a champion lost in a world that didn't recognize the skills he had mastered. And yet, somewhere deep inside, a quiet determination grew: he would learn. He had survived the heights of glory before. Surely, he could survive this too. The question was not whether he could endure. The question was whether he could rise again. It happened on an ordinary morning, one of those scorching days when the sun beat down relentlessly, and the cattle wandered restlessly through the fields. The horse was struggling, as he had been for weeks, trying to herd a particularly stubborn group of cows. His movements were cautious, uncertain, and every misstep drew a sharp reprimand from the ranch hands. Then something unexpected occurred. A young calf broke free from the herd, darting toward the edge of a steep ravine. Chaos erupted as the other cows followed, and the ranchers shouted frantically, trying to regain control. Time seemed to slow. The calf's small hooves pounded the dirt, dangerously close to the drop. Instinct, honed through years of training in the show ring, kicked in. The horse reacted without hesitation. His body coiled, muscles flexed, and with a burst of speed and precision, he intercepted the calf, nudging it back toward safety. Then, with remarkable agility, he guided the panicked herd away from the ravine, moving with a combination of strength, grace, and intelligence that no one on the ranch had expected. The ranchers watched in stunned silence. The fancy show horse, dismissed as delicate and useless, had just saved a calf from certain disaster. Their skepticism faltered, replaced by awe. Slowly, disbelief turned to admiration. Whispers spread across the pasture. "Did you see that? I didn't know he could do that." For the horse, nothing had changed in his mind. He had merely reacted, using what he knew in a world that demanded it. But for the humans around him, this moment shattered every assumption. The horse they thought incapable of real work had proven his worth in a way that words could not capture. That single incident became a turning point. Respect replaced doubt. Hope replaced fear. And the horse, though unaware of the magnitude of what he had done, felt a flicker of confidence stir inside him. This was no longer a mere test of survival. This was the moment his story began to change, and no one would ever see him the same way again. After that fateful day, the ranchers began to see him differently. No longer was he the delicate show horse, dismissed as incapable of real work. Instead, he became a presence of quiet strength, a horse who combined the discipline of his past life with the raw demands of the ranch. The first signs were subtle. He started anticipating the movements of the cattle, positioning himself just ahead of the herd to guide them effortlessly. His sharp reflexes, once meant for perfect turns and precise steps in the show ring, now kept him nimble over rocky terrain. The ranchers began giving him tasks he had once failed at, watching closely as he executed them with growing confidence. Slowly, he adapted. Long hours under the sun no longer seemed daunting. He learned the rhythm of the ranch, the timing of commands, and the behavior of the cattle. Mistakes became rare, replaced by an almost instinctive understanding of what was needed. Even the toughest, stubbornest animals seemed to respect him, responding to his movements with a trust he had never commanded before. One rancher, a grizzled man who had doubted him from the start, finally admitted it aloud. "He's something else," he said quietly, watching the horse lead the herd up a steep hill with effortless precision. "I never thought I'd see the day." But the horse didn't need praise. His pride came from the work itself, from the satisfaction of mastering a world that had once seemed impossible. Every day, he proved that he belonged here, not by dazzling crowds or winning ribbons, but by showing strength, intelligence, and courage in a life that demanded more than beauty or grace. Word of his abilities spread across the ranch. Tasks that once required multiple horses and riders were now handled by him alone. He became the lead horse, the one others followed, the silent hero who moved with quiet authority. The horse that everyone thought would fail had not only survived, he had risen to a place of respect and admiration. His glory days in the show ring had prepared him in ways no one had imagined. Now, on the open fields of the ranch, he was more than a champion, he was indispensable. And for the first time in weeks, he felt at home. It happened on a stormy afternoon, the sky dark and heavy with rain. The cattle had scattered, spooked by thunder and lightning, and chaos erupted across the ranch. The ranchers shouted frantically, trying to round up the herd before they bolted into dangerous terrain. The horse sprang into action. Years of show ring training merged with his newfound ranch instincts. He darted between the animals, guiding them with precision and authority, anticipating their every move. When a panicked cow charged toward a cliff, he positioned himself just in time, nudging it back to safety. Another calf stumbled in the mud, and he stayed close, ensuring it didn't get trampled. The ranchers watched, mouths open in disbelief. The horse they had doubted, laughed at, and written off as delicate, had become the linchpin in saving both livestock and human lives. Every movement was controlled, every decision instinctive. When the storm finally passed, the once skeptical ranchers gathered in stunned silence. They looked at him with newfound respect and awe, realizing that this horse, once a show ring champion, now a ranch hero, had exceeded every expectation. He had not just adapted. He had transformed. And no one would ever forget the day a champion saved the ranch. From that day forward, everything changed. The ranchers no longer saw him as a fragile, delicate show horse. He had earned something far greater than trophies or applause. He had earned their respect. Tasks that once seemed impossible were now his to command. Leading the herd, navigating treacherous terrain, and handling the stubbornest cattle became second nature. His intelligence, strength, and agility were no longer a mystery. They were undeniable. Even the ranch hands who had doubted him now looked to him for guidance, marveling at the skill and composure he displayed under pressure. The horse himself felt a quiet transformation. He no longer measured his worth by the cheers of a crowd or the shine of a trophy. Instead, he found satisfaction in mastery and purpose, the rhythm of work, the bond with humans who trusted him, and the life he had carved for himself in this harsh, demanding world. In a place where only strength and resilience mattered, he had discovered a new identity. Not just a champion of elegance, but a champion of life, of survival, and of respect earned the hard way. He had been discarded, doubted, and underestimated. Yet through patience, courage, and determination, he had proven that true greatness is not measured by glory alone, but by the ability to rise, adapt, and thrive in the face of adversity. The horse stood proudly in the pasture, eyes calm, posture strong. No longer just a champion in name, he had become something far more enduring, a symbol of resilience and respect. As the sun set over the wide, open fields of the ranch, the horse stood tall, silhouetted against the orange sky. The world he had once known, the glittering show rings, the applause, the trophies lining polished shelves, felt like a distant dream. Yet he had discovered something far more valuable: purpose, resilience, and the respect of those who mattered most. Life had tested him in ways no one could have predicted. He had fallen from glory, faced doubt, struggled to adapt, and endured challenges that seemed impossible. And yet, through every trial, he had grown stronger. What had begun as a story of loss and despair had become one of courage and triumph. The ranchers, once skeptical, now looked at him with admiration, understanding that true greatness is not measured by fame or accolades, but by the strength to overcome adversity, the patience to learn, and the courage to rise when the world doubts you. This horse, once discarded and underestimated, had proven that second chances can reveal hidden potential, that resilience can redefine identity, and that greatness often appears where no one expects it. He was no longer just a champion of the show ring. He had become a champion of life itself, an enduring reminder that even in the harshest circumstances, strength, heart, and determination can change everything.